Let me tell you something that might sting at first. Most people are not thinking about you, not judging you, not watching your every move. And once you truly understand this, everything changes. We grow up believing the world is watching us, that every mistake is remembered, every awkward moment recorded, every failure judged. But the Stoics saw something clearly long before social media ever existed. People are too busy thinking about themselves, their fears, their struggles, their image, their survival. And that realization isn't depressing, it's freeing. If this idea already feels uncomfortable, good. That discomfort is the door to freedom. And if you're searching for calm, clarity, and mental strength in a noisy world, subscribe now. Not because you need me, but because this path is easier when you walk it with wisdom guiding you. Now, breathe for a moment, because what we're about to talk about isn't motivation, it's liberation. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic minds to ever live, once reflected on how fleeting human attention really is. He reminded himself that even the people we desperately try to impress will soon forget our names, not because they are cruel, but because they are human. Think about it. How often do you replay someone else's embarrassing moment? How long do you stay focused on another person's mistake? Minutes? Seconds? Then your mind returns to your own life. This is the truth we avoid. You are the center of your world, just as everyone else is the center of theirs. And that's exactly why their opinions should never control your life. The Stoics taught a principle that changes everything once you grasp it. If something is not fully under your control, it should never rule your peace. Other people's thoughts are not under your control. Their reactions are not under your control. Their approval is not under your control. So why do we live as if they are? Pause here for a second. Ask yourself, honestly, how many decisions have you delayed? How many words you swallowed? How many paths you avoided because you were afraid of being judged? That fear feels real, but it is built on an illusion that says they are watching me. They're not. They're watching themselves. And when you accept this fully, something powerful happens. You stop performing. You stop apologizing for existing. You stop shrinking. You begin to act. Not recklessly, not arrogantly, but deliberately. This is where Stoic freedom begins. Epictetus, another Stoic teacher who lived as a slave before becoming free in mind and spirit, taught that suffering comes not from events, but from our judgments about them. And one of the most damaging judgments we carry is this: what others think of me defines me. The Stoic answer is simple and brutal in its honesty. It doesn't. It never has, and it never will. If this is resonating so far, gently tap the like button. Not for the algorithm, but because it tells YouTube this message is worth showing to someone who feels trapped by judgment right now. Now, let's go deeper. Here's the paradox most people miss. The moment you stop trying to be impressive, you become respectable. Why? Because confidence that doesn't ask for permission feels grounded. Stillness feels powerful. Authenticity commands attention without demanding it. The Stoics didn't chase admiration, they cultivated character. And character outlives opinion. Imagine walking into a room knowing this truth deep in your bones. No one is keeping score. No one is cataloging your flaws. No one is waiting for you to fail. Suddenly, your shoulders relax. Your voice steadies. Your mind clears. You speak when it matters. You stay silent when it doesn't. You act according to your values, not the crowd's mood. This is not indifference. This is inner sovereignty. And sovereignty is magnetic. Here's something else the Stoics understood that modern life makes easy to forget. Most criticism says more about the critic than the target. When someone judges you harshly, it often reveals their fears, their insecurities, their unhealed wounds. Stoicism doesn't teach you to hate critics. it teaches you to outgrow them. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to defend your worth. A calm mind doesn't argue with noise, it moves forward. Ask yourself this question and really sit with it. 5 years from now, will this opinion still matter? Most of the time, the honest answer is no. And if it won't matter then, it doesn't deserve to control you now. This is how Stoics reclaim their energy. They stop leaking it into imaginary judgments. They stop rehearsing conversations that never happen. They stop living in other people's heads. They come home to themselves. Before we move into next part, where we'll break down why seeking approval is addictive and how to break free from it, I want you to reflect on this. What would you do differently if you truly accepted that no one is thinking about you? Leave a comment with one honest answer. Not for me, for you. And stay with me, because once this truth settles in, you don't just feel calmer, you become free.
Before we continue, let me ask you something gently. When was the last time you replayed an awkward moment in your head, something you said, something you did, and you assumed everyone noticed? Now here's the Stoic truth. They didn't. And even if they did, they forgot within minutes. This realization can sting at first, but once it sinks in, it becomes one of the most liberating ideas you will ever encounter. The Stoics understood something most people never learn. Human beings are not focused on you. They are focused on themselves, their own worries, their own fears, their own insecurities, their own silent battles. Marcus Aurelius wrote, in his own way, that people are absorbed in their own affairs and rarely stop to examine anyone else for long. Think about your own life. How much time do you spend thinking about other people's mistakes, their awkward moments, their flaws? Not much. And yet you assume the spotlight is always on you. This is what modern psychology calls the spotlight effect. The Stoics simply called it illusion. You are not under constant observation. You are not being judged the way your mind tells you. And once you truly accept this, a massive weight begins to lift. Here's where freedom begins. Most people live as if they are on stage, performing, editing themselves, filtering their words, suppressing their truth. Not because they want to, but because they are afraid. Afraid of judgment, afraid of rejection, afraid of being misunderstood. But when you realize that no one is truly watching, you stop performing. And when you stop performing, you start living. This is one of the deepest Stoic insights. Epictetus taught that suffering doesn't come from events themselves. It comes from the stories we tell about them. And one of the most damaging stories we tell ourselves is this: everyone is watching me. That story creates anxiety. That story creates hesitation. That story keeps you small. But when you replace it with the truth, no one is thinking about me nearly as much as I think, something powerful happens. You loosen your grip. You speak more honestly. You act more naturally. You move with less fear and more presence. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop trying to be impressive, you become more respectable. The moment you stop trying to be liked, you become more authentic. People don't connect with perfection. They connect with presence. Stoics never tried to control how they were perceived. They focused on controlling their character, because character is always within your control. Reputation is not. This is critical, especially today. Social media has amplified the illusion that everyone is watching, that every move is judged, that every mistake is permanent. But the Stoic mindset cuts through that noise. You are not here to curate an image. You are here to live according to your values. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, do what is right, say what is true, accept the outcome. That's it. No obsession with approval, no attachment to applause, just quiet integrity. Now let's pause for a moment.
If this idea is resonating with you, if you've ever felt trapped by other people's opinions, this is a good moment to reflect. What would you do differently if you truly believed no one was watching? Would you speak up more? Would you take more risks? Would you stop apologizing for existing? You don't need to answer out loud. Just notice what comes up, because those answers point directly to your freedom. Another Stoic principle comes into play here, the dichotomy of control. There are things you control, your actions, your effort, your values, and there are things you don't, other people's thoughts, moods, judgments. The moment you try to control what cannot be controlled, you create inner conflict. But when you release that burden, you regain peace. Think of how much energy is wasted every day trying to predict how others will react. That energy could be used to build, to learn, to improve, to live fully. Instead, it gets burned on imaginary judgment. Here's something few people realize. Most criticism you fear never arrives, and most criticism that does arrive says more about the other person than it does about you. Stoics knew this well. They didn't take praise personally, and they didn't take insults personally either. Both were external, both were fleeting, both were irreliable. What mattered was alignment with their inner compass. This is why Stoics appeared calm in public, unshaken by approval or disapproval, not because they didn't care, but because they cared about the right things. And this brings us to a powerful shift. When you stop caring about being seen, you start caring about being solid. When you stop caring about opinions, you start caring about principles. That's maturity. That's strength. That's Stoic freedom. Now let me say this clearly and gently. This isn't about becoming indifferent to people. Stoicism is not emotional coldness. It's about becoming independent from unnecessary judgment. You can care deeply about people without being controlled by their opinions. You can be kind without being performative. You can be confident without being loud. And when you live this way, something unexpected happens. People begin to respect you, not because you demanded it, not because you chased it, but because calm self-possession is rare, and rare things are noticed. If this message is helping you rethink the way you see yourself and the world, take a moment to let the algorithm know by liking the video. It helps this message reach people who need it, people who feel trapped by invisible expectations. Now, in the next part, we're going to go even deeper. We'll talk about letting go of imagined judgment changes the way you walk, speak, and carry yourself, and why silent confidence is one of the most powerful forces in human interaction. This is where Stoic freedom turns into Stoic presence. So stay with me. You're not being watched, and that's exactly why you're finally free.
Most people don't suffer because of what others do to them. They suffer because of the stories they tell themselves about what others might be thinking. This is where Stoicism becomes liberating. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself that people are far more concerned with their own struggles than with judging yours. Not because they're selfish, but because they're human. Think about it. How often do you replay someone else's mistake for days? How often do you obsess over what someone else said, wore, failed at? You don't, because your mind is busy managing your life, and so is everyone else's. Yet we walk through the world as if we're on a stage, as if every move is being watched, as if one mistake defines us forever. This belief quietly controls behavior. It makes people hesitate, over-explain, apologize for existing, shrink their ambitions to avoid judgment. But here's the Stoic truth that cuts through all of that. No one is thinking about you as much as you think they are. And once that truth settles in, freedom begins. The Stoics taught a principle called dichotomy of control. Some things are within your control, others are not. Your values, your actions, your effort, those are yours. Other people's thoughts, opinions, interpretations, not yours, never were. The moment you try to manage them, you lose yourself. This is why Stoics practiced inner authority. They didn't seek permission to live. They sought alignment with their own principles. Imagine how much energy you've spent trying to be perceived correctly, trying to avoid misunderstanding, trying to prevent criticism. Now imagine redirecting that energy toward becoming stronger, calmer, clearer. That's Stoic freedom. Here's something uncomfortable but necessary to hear. Most judgments people make about you aren't actually about you. They're reflections of their own fears, insecurities, and expectations. Someone calls you arrogant because they fear confidence. Someone calls you weak because they fear vulnerability. Someone dismisses your growth because it reminds them of what they've avoided. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus said that people are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them. That includes the views they take of you. So why would you surrender your peace to something so unstable? Let me ask you something important and answer it honestly. If no one was watching, if no one could comment, if no one could judge, what would you do differently? That question alone reveals how much invisible control you've been under. Stoic detachment doesn't mean isolation. It doesn't mean indifference. It means refusing to live on borrowed opinions. It means choosing self-respect over external approval. And paradoxically, this is where real respect begins. People are drawn to those who don't seek validation, not because they're cold, but because they're grounded. There's a quiet confidence in someone who moves without apology, who listens but isn't ruled, who considers feedback but doesn't bend their identity around it. This is why Stoics valued consistency over popularity. You don't need to be admired by everyone. You need to be aligned with yourself. Now pause for a moment. If this idea is resonating with you, take a second to engage with this video. A simple like helps this message reach someone who may need it today. And if you're finding value here, subscribing means you continue this journey with us, calmly, deliberately, and without noise. Here's a practical Stoic reflection you can apply today. The next time you feel self-conscious, ask yourself, can I prove this judgment exists? Most of the time, you can't. It's a projection, a guess, a fear masquerading as certainty. When you challenge it, it weakens. Another practice the Stoics used was voluntary exposure. They would intentionally face small discomforts, not to suffer, but to realize they survived. Speak your opinion once. Wear what feels authentic once. Say no once, and notice what happens. Nothing catastrophic, no collapse, no permanent judgment, just life continuing. This retrains the mind. You stop seeing social discomfort as danger. You stop confusing attention with threat, and slowly something shifts. You start moving with more ease, more clarity, more self-trust. This is the beginning of emotional independence. Not rebellion, not defiance, freedom. There's a reason the most grounded people feel rare today. They're not louder, they're not constantly performing, they're present. They know that being misunderstood is part of being real. They know that approval is temporary. They know that peace comes from inside, or not at all. And most importantly, they know that no one is thinking about them as much as they once feared, which is why they're free. In the next part, we'll go deeper into how this freedom changes the way you act, speak, and carry yourself, and why people begin to respect you without you trying. If you're ready for that level of calm and control, stay with me. Let me tell you something most people never realize. The thing that hurts you the most is not what others think of you. It's what you imagine they think. That imagined audience in your head, that invisible courtroom where you're constantly on trial, that fear of being judged, laughed at, misunderstood, or dismissed. The Stoics saw this clearly. They understood that the ego creates a false world, a world where you believe you are being watched, evaluated, and measured at all times. But here is the truth that changes everything. Most people are too busy thinking about themselves to think about you. And once that truth sinks in, the ego begins to loosen its grip. Not all at once, but slowly, quietly, powerfully. The ego wants to be seen. It wants approval. It wants control over how others perceive you. But Stoicism teaches something radical. Your value does not increase when others praise you, and it does not decrease when they ignore you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Not for an audience, not for fame, but for himself. Soon you will have forgotten everything. Soon everyone will have forgotten you." This wasn't despair. This was freedom. Because when you stop trying to protect an image, you finally have the energy to live. Think about how much of your life has been shaped by fear of perception. The clothes you didn't wear, the words you didn't say, the path you didn't take. Not because it was wrong, but because you were afraid of how it would look. That fear is not wisdom. It is a cage, and Stoicism gives you the key. Here's the shift. Instead of asking, "What will they think of me?" the Stoic asks, "Is this aligned with my values?" Because values are internal, opinions are external, and only one of those is under your control. Let me ask you something, and be honest with yourself. How often do you replay moments in your head? Things you said, things you didn't say, moments you think you embarrassed yourself. Now ask this, how often do other people replay those moments? Almost never. They moved on. They forgot. They were busy worrying about their own lives. Yet you stayed behind, punishing yourself in silence. Stoicism teaches you to stop self-surveillance, to stop standing outside yourself, watching, judging, correcting. Epictetus warned that the fastest way to lose freedom is to let your sense of self depend on the opinions of others. Because once you do that, your emotions are no longer yours. Your peace becomes negotiable. Your confidence becomes fragile. Your identity becomes unstable. But when you accept that no one is thinking about you the way you fear, you stop performing. You start being. This is where true presence begins. You walk differently. You speak more slowly. You listen more deeply. Not because you're trying to impress, but because you're no longer afraid. And here's the paradox the Stoics understood. The less you try to be seen, the more grounded your presence becomes. People feel it, not because you demand attention, but because you're not begging for it. There is a quiet authority in someone who doesn't need validation. They don't rush, they don't over-explain, they don't defend every choice. They're comfortable with silence, and silence, when backed by self-respect, is powerful. This is why Stoicism emphasizes inner sovereignty. You rule yourself, so no one else has to. You don't need to announce your confidence. You don't need to prove your worth. You let your actions speak, and you let time reveal truth. Now pause for a moment. If no one is thinking about you, what would you do differently today? Would you speak more honestly? Would you take that risk? Would you stop apologizing for existing? This is not recklessness. This is liberation. Stoics didn't reject society. They rejected slavery to opinion. They showed up fully, without being owned by applause or criticism. And that's the balance. You still act with virtue. You still treat others with respect, but you stop shaping your life around invisible judgments. You stop living in reaction. Because when you live for approval, you are always behind, reacting, adjusting, shrinking. But when you live by principle, you move forward, calmly, deliberately, freely. Let me give you a practical reflection. Next time you feel that familiar anxiety, the urge to impress, the fear of being misunderstood, ask yourself this one question: will this matter in 5 years? Most of the time, the answer is no. And when the answer is no, you release it. That's Stoic discipline. Not suppression, not denial, just clarity. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That strength is not loud, it is not aggressive, it is steady. It is the strength to be ordinary when the ego demands to be special. the strength to be misunderstood without needing to explain, the strength to live truthfully without needing permission. And here's the final truth of this part. When the ego stops screaming for attention, the soul finally has room to breathe. You don't disappear, you emerge, calmer, clearer, more grounded than ever before. And in the next part, we'll go even deeper into how this freedom transforms your decisions, your confidence, and your future. So stay with me. If this part resonated, pause for a moment and reflect. And if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed, because this journey is only getting stronger from here.
At some point, something quiet but powerful happens. You stop checking people's faces for approval. You stop replaying conversations in your head. You stop asking yourself, did I say the wrong thing? Not because you've become careless, but because you've finally understood the truth. No one is thinking about you. And that realization sets you free. The Stoics didn't seek freedom through rebellion. They found it through understanding reality as it is, not as the ego imagines it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, in essence, that most people are absorbed in their own thoughts, their own fears, their own struggles. And when you truly accept this, something shifts inside you. The invisible audience disappears. The imaginary judges leave the room. And suddenly, you are alone, in the best possible way. This is where real freedom begins. Freedom is not doing whatever you want. Freedom is not needing permission to be yourself. Think about how much of your life has been shaped by invisible pressure. How you dress, how you speak, how you hold back your opinions, how you hesitate before acting. All because of people who won't remember what you did tomorrow. The Stoic sees this clearly. They understand that reputation is fragile, opinions are fleeting, and attention is temporary. So instead of performing, they focus on character. Instead of chasing validation, they build inner order. Instead of fearing judgment, they practice alignment. This is the final stage of Stoic freedom, living from the inside out. You no longer ask, how will this look? You ask, is this right? You no longer ask, will they approve? You ask, does this reflect my values? And once you start living this way, something interesting happens. People may not think about you, but they begin to respect you. Because calm confidence doesn't seek attention, it attracts it. When you stop trying to impress, you become grounded. When you stop trying to please, you become consistent. When you stop reacting emotionally, you become predictable in the best way. The Stoics understood this paradox. The less you chase external approval, the more stable your presence becomes. And stability is rare. In a world of overreaction, calm stands out. In a world of noise, restraint commands attention. In a world of performance, authenticity feels powerful. Not loud power, quiet power, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. This is why Stoics moved through the world differently. They spoke less, but with intention. They acted steadily, not impulsively. They accepted praise without clinging to it. They accepted criticism without internalizing it. Because neither praise nor criticism defined them, only their actions did. Now pause for a moment. Think about how much energy you would reclaim if you stopped caring about opinions that don't build your life. How much calmer your mind would feel if you stopped imagining conversations that never happen. How much clearer your decisions would become if fear of judgment no longer guided them. This is not detachment from humanity. This is detachment from illusion. You still care about people. You still act with kindness. You still respect others, but you no longer hand them control over your inner world. That is the Stoic difference. And here's the most important truth of all. You don't become free all at once. You practice freedom daily, in small moments. When you post without overthinking, when you speak without rehearsing, when you act without apologizing for existing, when you choose peace over performance. Some days the old habits will return. The urge to explain yourself, the desire to be liked, the fear of being misunderstood. That's normal. Stoicism isn't about never feeling these things. It's about recognizing them and not obeying them. You notice the thought, you let it pass, you return to what matters, again and again and again. This is how freedom is built, quietly. And now, ask yourself this. If no one is truly watching, if no one is keeping score, if no one is thinking about you the way you imagine, who would you become if you finally let yourself be free? Not louder, not more aggressive, not reckless, but calmer, clearer, more intentional. That is the Stoic goal. To live without the weight of imagined judgment, to move without fear of invisible eyes, to act in alignment with reason and virtue. And when you do this consistently, your life simplifies, your mind quiets, your energy stabilizes, your presence strengthens. You stop shrinking, you stop apologizing, you stop explaining. You simply are. And that is enough. If this series has helped you see yourself more clearly, if it's helped you loosen the grip of anxiety and self-consciousness, take a moment, leave a comment with one word that represents your new mindset: freedom, calm, detachment, clarity. And if you're ready to continue this journey, to build a mind that is steady, grounded, and unshaken, subscribe to the channel. Not for motivation, not for hype, but for clarity. Thank you for walking this path with me. Stay grounded, stay unshaken, stay stoic.